Unpack this issue a little bit further, and joining us via Skype is Professor John Stremlau from Wits University. Prof, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Good evening.
All right, towards the end of last year, you sat at a business school gathering and you said 2020, the biggest international event for South Africa will be the US election. Admittedly, you didn't know COVID-19 was on its way, but if we take that out of the equation, do you still stand by your words?
Yes, I do. But COVID did surprise everybody and is the story of the year.
All right, so why is this the biggest international event for South Africa?
Well, for South Africa in particular, let us not forget that Joe Biden has showed a sensitivity to the fundamental issue that defines American life and democracy, and that is the sediment of slavery and the racism that Donald Trump played upon in his bid to backlash and exploit the 8 years of Barack Obama. And what we see in his base is the disaffected, non-college educated white males from the Midwest, the rural areas that have felt left out in globalization, but also would like to make America great again, where white ethnic nationalism predominates. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime, certainly, and perhaps ever, who has run explicitly as a white ethnic nationalist, and his racism is transparent, and it is a dog whistle that he never ceases blowing loudly and clearly. And so therefore, for Africa, which is struggling to come to terms with its own diversity, to have America that is more inclusive, more a country that belongs to all who live there and united in its diversity, that is promised by Kamala Harris and Joseph Biden, really would be emblematic of the fact that democracy is sustainable and is resilient, which after all is at the core of the African Union and the African Charter for Democracy, Elections, and Governance, and I think is the aspiration of an awful lot of people on this continent. Beyond that, of course, the programs will be driven by the domestic preoccupations with COVID and with the economic recovery. But I think there's room for dialogue, and that he wants to have a meeting with African leaders fairly soon on in his administration. I just think you'll find a receptive and cooperative person, and whoever he has as a Secretary of State is likely to take Africa a lot more seriously than either Tillerson or Pompeo, and certainly more so than Donald Trump.
So Donald Trump, he was America first. That's really was his battle cry. And so Africa didn't register much except for a few insults along the way. And I just wonder, though, with this modern day scramble for Africa and how he pits himself against China, is that not something to entice him to battle for Africa's attention?
I don't think so, frankly. What has happened, of course, is, and this is a bit surprising, programs that were started by Democrats and Republicans, like the PEPFAR for HIV/AIDS treatment, or Power Africa, or Feed the Future, even Barack Obama's initiative, YALI, for young African leaders, they have continued below the radar screen. Trump has been focused elsewhere. He only pays attention to Africa when he makes a backhanded comment. He doesn't like people of color or anyone different from he. And we know the famous flippant term he used that was unseemly. But also, he identifies with white farmers in South Africa and Afro Forum. I mean, it's really absurd. But his business with regard to Africa, he's never been here, he won't come here. I think it's disregarding. Now, the doctrine that he had for a while in his former national security head, John Bolton, really saw Africa as a theater which you counter Chinese influence. I think Joe Biden will have a much more nuanced view. You have to deal with China as a competitor in things like technology or in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and certainly with Taiwan and Hong Kong. But in Africa, there can be win-win-wins. It is going to be difficult to put together again, but Xi Jinping and Barack Obama cooperated productively in climate change and for the Green Climate Fund, which matters to Africa. And I see Biden being very receptive and his people being very receptive to this kind of practical engagement. This new initiative to underwrite foreign investment here in Africa, the so-called BUILD Act, that is going to double the amount of finance for U.S. corporations interested in investing in Africa from 30 to 60 billion. That would be seen by some hardliners in the Trump administration as countering China's Belt and Road Initiative. I think for the Biden administration, it'd be much more nuanced. It would say, look, Africa needs a lot of things in the infrastructure. We support this kind of a program. Let's find ways that we can be.
Hello, Prof. Are you still there? Okay, looks like we may have lost that signal there. Yeah, I think we're probably going to have to leave it there. So that's Professor John Stremlau, in effect, really saying that if we have to pick a winner that's best for the continent and South Africa, then Joe Biden is probably our best bet. And Donald Trump, well, he didn't pay much attention to the continent. In fact, he was fairly insultive. All right, let's go back to Professor John Stremlau. One question I have for you. There's no doubt that Donald Trump has really damaged the reputation of America worldwide, and that people view America differently as a result of that. Will they easily press the reset button with Joe Biden because of his time with Barack Obama, or has he got a lot of work to do to re-engineer America's image abroad?
He has huge work to do. This is 4 years later. It cannot just simply be a reset button. It has to be identified with the problems that he's inherited and will attempt to overcome, starting with rebuilding the State Department, for example. Africans need to have someone on the telephone at the other end, and they simply have had a difficulty trying to figure out who in this administration is worth talking to for what. And when we see, you talked earlier about healthcare, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which was a tremendous resource for Africa when the Ebola crisis hit, or in the SARS and Lassa fever areas, that was all stripped down and politicized. It's got to be rebuilt. He's got to rejoin the World Health Organization. There's just a lot of things that have to be done fairly quickly. Meanwhile, COVID and the economic crisis and the racial tensions that have been brewing for a long time, and with Black Lives Matter now, it's the time to redress some of these historic, systemic, racist concerns that are now becoming mainstream in American politics. Those are all very important. And I guess what I'm going to have confidence in is that his set of advisors will know this continent very well, whether it's Susan Rice or Chris Coons, the senator from Delaware, or Tony Blinken. They know, have a feeling for the importance that Africa matters to America, particularly because Joe Biden got his nomination after African Americans said he's our guy in South Carolina. Remember, his candidacy was flawed until then. So there's a lot to be attentive to, but I think Africa needs to give him an agenda of its own and ask that it be considered seriously.
All right. Professor John Stremlau, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed, as always, for your insights. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.